bar onto the back. You should have a book-matched back set. Most of you should have it thicknessed by now. Some of you may even have it joined by now. If you don't, that's what we're going to do now. So joining the back, there are a number of ways that we can do that. One is with a jig. Some people make their own jigs. There are a few commercially made jigs that you can join these plates with, the backs and the tops, and to prepare the joint with. To prepare the joint, I'm going to use a plane. There are a few different planes you can use. I'm going to use the low angle jack. You can also use a smoothing plane or a small block plane that has a 90-degree corner on it. Let's take a look at that now. Now I can take these and just kind of hold them up, and with the super light plywood underneath, I can see a couple of spots that just are not joined. The other way you can do that is by holding them together, hold them up to the light source, and I can see exactly what parts are touching, what parts aren't. We really want to get this joint as close as we can. We really don't want to see any light gaps. And yeah, as I move it along, I can see exactly where some of my trouble spots are. Not many. We're actually pretty close already. When you get close, it's really easy to take too much off and to keep chasing that gap. So just take things slow, be very careful about it, and you'll get there. Any work that you're going to do on this joint, you want to plane these down together, sand them together. Because if you only do one at a time, it's going to be very hard to take an equal amount off and make the center joint look as nice as it really needs to be. Sometimes these joints will fight you, and sometimes they're super easy. You just don't have a good way of knowing when that's going to be. Like I said, take it slow. Be very deliberate. And when those gaps start to get so slight, we can change how we're doing this just a little bit. Let me take one more pass before we try to fine-tune it. When you're holding it up to the light and as you're moving it across that light source, you can bend them just a little bit, and just to make sure that that joint is meeting up where you think it is. Because you might be off a little bit. You want to really make sure that you've got those perfectly aligned with each other so that you're not spreading them apart one way or the other. If you are getting close, what you can do is back your blade off on this. Use the plane as kind of a glorified, super accurate sanding block. Get those lined up just right. Make sure we're touching both of the plates at the same time. And super lightly. Just take a few passes along it. And I think that is all I'm going to do there. Okay, let's take one last look after that super light sanding pass. Oh yeah. Oh man, that's perfect. Yeah. All right, it is ready to go. Excellent. Just like almost every operation in guitar building, there are numerous ways to do this. What we're going to do is join the backs. This is the ultimate super cheap joining jig. The way this works is just one layer of plywood. It's got one side that's somewhat permanent. This side is not. This side is the one that we adjust to the edges. Okay, and when we put this down, it's actually a little wobbly on this side. We want to have this side be straight, so we're going to have to adjust this first. But real quick, the way this works is that we put a taper into this edge, a very slight taper. We take this, butt that up against it, drill this in, and then we will use that to bump, 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 kind of wedge this in and use these sides as the clamp. And if you push this in too hard, you'll kind of buckle it. You can squeeze this too hard and squeeze quite a bit of glue out. We don't need that much pressure. We just need to have this be a nice consistent pressure all the way through this center seam, and then we'll place some weights on it to make sure it doesn't pop up. Then we'll leave it sit for about 30-45 minutes, and we'll work on the bracing. I'm going to use the straight edge to give me a straight line across here. I want to be very careful though, because I am starting to get pretty close to running out of room here. And don't get fooled by this original outline, because remember, we took some material off the center to straighten up this joint, which means that right now the edge of the guitar is actually closer to this. So we have to be real careful about how much we take off jointing and getting things prepared for this. So this is the line that's going to get me straight from here to here to take out that bow. Yeah, looks good. Now we're going to have to do something similar on this side. I do want an actual taper. So I do have to come in just a little bit up here, come in this way to give myself a slight taper. Now again, we have to be super careful about our distance here because we don't want to run out of room. This particular set was really just cut for the OM, and they did not leave that much room. If you want to leave yourself a little more room, you need to order a slightly larger back set. Dreadnought's going to be a little bigger than this. And then a jumbo, of course, is going to be even larger. Now, one thing on this that I do want to point out is that I do have clear packing tape down the center of this so that when we glue it together that the sides don't stick to this. Okay. Great, that looks good. Looks great. Now, some of you may have ordered a center strip in your kit, and if that's the case, you would want that to go right in between the two back pieces when you glue those up. So it would go down the middle like this. You can also use an extra piece of binding as your center strip. Sometimes that looks cool. So on the back, your binding ties into the existing bindings. Some of those back strips are kind of ornate braided material. They look a lot like a rosette. They can have patterns in them. You can make your own. You can do a lot of things with the back strip. But personally, I really like the way that this rosewood looks when you just glue it up together, and so I left it without. Let's look at our taper, and it looks like we do have a little bit of a taper here. That's good. That's exactly what we want. This seam isn't, it's not too bad to see. You can see it pretty good. It gets nice and dark, kind of disappears in between the grain here. So when we glue this up, you really want to keep track of this seam. So what you can do is there's two different things you can do. Misalign these just a little bit so that you've got a definite ridge right here to visually see where your center is. Then you can draw a line from here to here. The other thing you can do is take a notch off here and here, and then the same on the top. Take this notch here and notch here, which is what I typically like to do. And you can see this, just this little cut right here, this indentation that I made. So now I know exactly where that seam is. Same thing at the top. For me, that works out perfectly. And then I don't have to misalign my pieces, and I can get that grain exactly where I want it to. What I will usually do here is pull this back from the upper edge right here. It's just about fine. So I have this in place. I butt this up against it, screw this down. And I'm just going to use yellow glue on this. Spread that glue out. And it looks like we actually need a little bit more right here. Sometimes with this tiny bottle, in an effort to keep things less messy, it takes a little more time to get that glue applied. All right, looks good. Good consistent pressure. Now what's going to happen is it's going to want to kind of creep up in the middle here. So we need a little bit of weight to hold that down. Now this is clamped up, things look good, it's nice and flat. We'll leave it for 30 to 45 minutes, come back and take it out, and then we will look at final thicknessing and the center back brace, or the reinforcement strip. It has actually been almost an hour, so we'll take this off. This board I had on there also has clear packing tape on it so that the glue doesn't stick to it. So it's been long enough that there aren't really any glue goopies on here that are still wet or anything. These have had plenty of time to dry. And for cleaning this up, what I'll usually do is put a cam clamp right here, cabinet scraper. You do want to be very careful that you don't just focus on that center seam and dig yourself a hole, especially in the center seam, where maybe the edges weren't quite in line with each other and you have to scrape one side off to get it even. Make sure that you kind of try to feather that out a little bit. And if you didn't get it really cleaned up before we got to this point, after you've gone through the safety planer, then you'll probably have a lot of swirl marks that you'll need to clean up anyway. So this is a great time to get that done. And I am just not getting the shavings that I want from this. So I'm going to go ahead, take a quick break, and sharpen this up and get back to it. Oh yeah. That's much better. Now I'm getting some curls. All right. It's looking great. Okay. We also want to be careful about how much we're taking off, because remember, we have to do the other side as well. Now this is the inside, so we need to get this cleaned up. Then we'll get it sanded and get it ready for the bracing. Just get some more of these marks out of here. Oh. And if you're getting a little more dust like I was just there, make sure you change the angle so you can find that hook, or switch aside. Yeah, much better. Now we'll just give it a little bit of a sanding, and this part you can do with a power sander. You just want to be careful about digging those holes like we were talking about. It's real easy to sit in one spot or focus on one spot too much and get yourself in a hole, especially if you're using a power sander. Make sure that if you have one spot that you absolutely need, that you're feathering that out, because once this gets a finish on it, especially if you're doing a high gloss finish, those dips and undulations are going to stick out like a sore thumb. If you are at a point with your scraper that everything's clean, that you don't have any big gouges or glue or other scratches or anything to take out, you can start with 150 or 180, which is where we're going to end up, and take a look and see if that's going to get you where you want to be. Otherwise, you can start at 120, and on the inside, 150 is fine, but I usually want to end up around 180. Makes for a better surface. The rosewood looks fantastic at 180. It is super easy for this center line to get away from you as far as being able to see it. So I'm going to go ahead and mark it here with this white pencil. Now I was able to use those notches that I put in here as my center line finders, and use those so I can find that center line, because it is hard to see in this rosewood if you match this up right and get a good glue line. You can see here how close I was getting. Really just don't have a lot of room to spare on that, so I was glad I got that back joint taken care of when I did, and that I didn't need to go out any further, because I was getting awful close on this side. The other side as well. Now this is a template I purchased. I've also made my own for custom sizes. So this, I am liking where this is laying up. Maybe I'll move it down just a little bit. So I'm going to trace this onto there. This particular one also has nice guides that we can mark out all of our braces when we get to the top. But for the back, we're just going to mark those out, and we'll get to that in just a second. So I'm going to mark this with the pencil, white pencil again, so it shows up nice and crisp on this dark Indian rosewood. Ooh-wee, man. It's getting awfully close on these edges. So this is going to be critical when I glue this up, that I don't get things shifted around and have it moved, because there is just not much room here. Usually I like to have 3/8 to a 1/2 inch all the way around here when I cut this out, that I've got a little bit of leeway on my sides when I glue this up. So hopefully we're okay. Pretty sure we are. Looks good so far. All right, the outline is traced, center line is traced, and this center line, I'm not worried about leaving that on there. That's going to go away when we put our back reinforcement strip on. Real quick, almost forgot about this. The last thing I want to do before we put the back braces on is check real quick with this thickness caliper. All right, we really want to end up about 2.5 millimeters. And I am 2.4 to 2.5 all the way through here, which is good. We really want to be careful about how much we have to sand down, how much we have to clean it up. We do not want to start getting those thin spots after we put all this work into it. So protect your work surface. Be careful in the mold, brush everything off. Now that we've got these pieces thinned down, the last thing you want to do is put a big scratch in it and have to sand that out and thin your side down. And pretty soon, you've got a very weak back that can get something punched through it or develop a crack really, really easily. And we want to protect that, prevent that as much as we possibly can.